Dear teachers, welcome to the assessment and evaluation lecture. We are still dealing with the first unit, that is perspectives on assessment and evaluation, and we have so far covered three subunits. Today we will look at the fourth subunit, that is purposes of assessment. Why assessment should be done, how to do it, all these things will be covered. But right now, what is important is that why it should be done. What is the purpose of doing assessment? So the first purpose of doing assessment is prognosis. What do you understand by prognosis? What do we mean by it? Prognosis is the process of making a prediction about a learner's ability to achieve in a specific subject area or a specific task or activity. So who makes this prediction? Generally, it is the teacher who will be making this prediction about the learner's ability to achieve in a specific subject area. So when it comes to a particular subject, the method master or the subject teacher will make a prediction whether a student can learn that subject or how good that student can be at a particular subject or in a given task or an activity. So this is done by the teachers. So for example, a prediction about a student's ability to do well in Hindi or maths, for instance, or behavior based on a test that he or she attempts. So now what happens if you are a maths teacher, you are a Hindi teacher, history, geography, English, any other subject for that matter. So if you are a particular subject teacher, in the first few days itself, you will get an understanding of your class as to how your class is going to fare in your subject or how a particular child is going to do in your subject. Okay. Now you tend to have this kind of prediction because it is, of course, it is human tendency, so that you understand your class in a better manner. Okay, and then based on that you will fine tune your teaching learning process. Okay, that is very important. So prognosis is the process of making this prediction to improve the teaching ability of the teacher and to make sure that the class or the learner learns in a better way or in a better manner. Now, prognosis is made with the help of a prognostic test. Okay, a prognostic test is an aptitude test whose purpose is to predict achievement in a specific subject area. That is, the test helps to predict how well a person is likely to perform in a certain school subject or task. So, of course, general predictions are made, no doubt about that, by the teachers. However, there is also a prognostic test, which is also an aptitude test actually for a child, and based on that, the achievement in that test, one can actually determine the learner's ability to achieve in that subject. Okay, so this is more formal way of doing it. So prognosis, which involves making a prediction about the learner's ability to achieve in that subject area, involves a prognostic test, which is given to the students so that you try and gauge the student's ability to achieve in your particular subject area. Now, let us move on to the next purpose of assessment. Okay, after prognostic test, what after prognosis, what would be the other purpose of assessment? So the second would be monitoring of learning. Now, monitoring of progress in learning is used to assess student progress or performance. So once you start teaching, or once you start going ahead with a particular subject with your students, then monitoring the progress in learning is also very, very important. Okay, it is not that you just go to the class, deliver your lecture or deliver uh, your content, and you come out of the class. It is not only that. You have to make sure that you are monitoring the progress of the child. You are monitoring the progress of the students, how they are doing with your subject, how they are, whether they are understanding what you're teaching, or what are the difficulties that you're facing. So if you see, just before this lecture, the third lecture which you attended, which was of course the asynchronous lecture. And after that, I had sent out a Google form, or I had sent out a feedback form to assess how you are faring in this particular unit. Okay, and many of you have in fact replied. Still, the replies are coming in. So this was one of the ways of monitoring your progress in this particular unit. Okay. Now, monitoring of progress also means monitoring closely those areas in which learners are identified to be weak. Let us presume you are a maths teacher, because normally that is the subject wherein most of the students feel, okay, they feel that they are not so good. Okay, that is the subject wherein students feel that they need additional help. Okay, so how are you going to monitor the progress of the child in mathematics? You will give periodical tests, you may ask questions in the class, you may want to get feedback from the students, those who are weak especially. Okay, so this is one way of monitoring your your teaching. Okay, because monitoring, of course we are monitoring the learning, no doubt about that, but in other words, if you just look at it, you realize that you are not only monitoring the progress of the child in learning, but also monitoring your progress in teaching. Because if a teacher can teach well, then it becomes easier for the students to understand the content that is delivered. Okay, that is very important. Now, please note that monitoring should be done for all categories of students, irrespective of whether they are above average, average, or below average. So it should not be that, okay, now if you monitor the progress of a child who's very good in mathematics, you will get to know that, okay, and you're going to presume that, okay, the entire class is doing well, because you have monitored the progress of those who are good in that subject. But what about those who are average or those who are below average? Have you monitored their progress? Because when you monitor the progress of all these students, that is above average, average, as well as below average, then you get a clearer picture of the class, where they stand when it comes to your subject. That is very important. So please make sure that you monitor the progress of all your students, not only good students or below average students or average students. So make sure that you go ahead with this monitoring process periodically. Do it regularly also, so that it helps you to understand where you stand in the class. Now, monitoring helps to determine if students are benefiting appropriately from the instructional program, to identify students who are not making adequate progress, and to help guide the construction of effective intervention programs for them. So why do you do this monitoring? Why are you doing this monitoring of the progress of the students? Because it will help you to determine if the students are actually benefiting from this instructional program, or are they actually benefiting from your lectures, or are they actually benefiting from what you are telling them. Are they actually understanding what you're telling them? Okay, that is one of the reasons why you monitor their progress. Because if they don't understand, then you have to definitely change your strategy of teaching them. Okay. Secondly, it is very helpful to identify students who are not making adequate progress. Because if you can identify those students who are not making adequate progress, it will be very helpful for those students, because once those students are identified, you know what are the remedial measures that you need to take to make sure that they come up to the level of the other students when it comes to your subject. And the next one is to help guide the construction of effective intervention programs for them. That is, decide on how you can go ahead with the remedial programs for those students who are weak in your subject, whether you are going to have separate tests for them, whether you're going to have separate classes for them after school, or you're going to pull them out during your lecture itself and keep them aside, maybe in one of the rows of the classes wherein you can focus more on them. So it is up to every individual teacher how they want to go ahead and design their intervention programs. However, monitoring will help you to design it, because you will be in a better position to understand where your students stand, and indirectly where you stand as a teacher. Now, the third purpose of assessment is providing feedback. Now, feedback is a term that is frequently used and loosely too. That means it is just use, okay, give me the feedback, give me the feedback of this session, give me the feedback of what this teacher is doing in the class. Very frequently used. Now, the role of feedback falls broadly into the following categories, namely correction, second, reinforcement, third is benchmarking, and fourth is longitudinal development or feed forward. Now, longitudinal development is concerned with forward looking rather than concerned with work already carried out. So, what are the things that I can do in a better manner? Okay, so you're looking at the work which you are going to do. Okay, so feedback must address future learning also, that is feed forward rather than just mere feedback. So, if you ask for suggestions about a particular uh, session, okay, and you are told what can be done to improve this, or what could have been done to improve your experience, or what can be done in future to make sure that the session becomes more enriching for you. So that could be a feed forward. Or that is not, so when you say feedback, normally it means it is feedback means whatever has happened earlier or whatever has already happened. So feedback. So now you have to feed forward. That means you have to give suggestions or some guidelines, or for that matter some points to improve that session. Okay, so because it has to address future learning as well. Actually, feedback has to also look at the reinforcement part, the correction part, the benchmarking part. Okay, so that is very, very important for when it comes to providing feedback. Okay? So who will give the feedback? Who will give the feedback? Of course, you as a teacher have to give feedback to your students, and at the same time, please make sure that you incorporate all these aspects of feedback, that is correction, reinforcement, benchmarking, and longitudinal development. Okay, and at the same time, when you are monitoring the progress, you can also ask them for their feedback or their suggestions for improvement of your class or your abilities as a teacher. Then moving on to the next purpose of assessment. The next purpose is promotion. Now, students' performance in the course or program, which is obtained through formative and summative tests, is used as evidence for their promotion from one class to the next higher class. Okay, that is pretty obvious. So, why do we do assessment? We do assessment because we have to send them to the next class. Why do we do final? Uh, uh, like one of the concepts involved in assessment is examination. Why do we have exams? Now these exams are conducted for every semester or at the end of a year. Why do we do that? Okay, it is only because we need to promote the students from one class to the next higher class. Okay, so and this is very, very important. Unless you know where the child stands, you will not be in a position to send him to the next class. So knowing where they stand is also very, very important. So students' performance in that course or program, that performance, how do you obtain that performance? Either you have to use formative or summative tests. Okay, and this is used as evidence. So no one can go ahead and question, why have you promoted him to the next class? Of course, right now till the 8th standard, as a part of your continuous and comprehensive evaluation, students do go to the next class. Now, however, what is the evidence that you will have with you? Now, formative assessments, summative assessments, we will be looking at these assessments as well. But you need to make sure that these assessments show some sort of progress in the child's performance. Okay, so we will be looking at formative and summative assessments when we look at the concept of continuous and comprehensive evaluation as well as school-based assessment. Okay, so we will look at these concepts in detail later on. Okay, now the next purpose of assessment is placement. Now, placement refers to placing a learner in a particular grade or class based on certain learner characteristics. Okay, so based on the characteristics of the learner, you are going to place the learner in a particular grade or class. So in order to be placed in a particular grade or class, the learner's entry behavior or capability is assessed to find out whether the learner possesses knowledge, skills, and attitudes needed to begin the course of instruction. So we can see that a placement test assesses the worthiness of a student to be a part of the new learning or not. Normally in the schools, we don't have something called a placement test. However, there are schools wherein there are, let us say, 4 or 5 classes, and some schools feel that to get better results, they have to keep some good students in a particular class, and those who need more attention could be placed in another class so that they can focus more on those students. Okay, so based on that, they go ahead and place these students in different classes, that means division A, division B, division C, and so on. And then according to that, they will go ahead and make sure that that much amount of attention is given to those students. Of course, the teachers are briefed about this so that they can either go slow with their course or with their with their subject, or they can go at a normal pace, but make sure that the all these 3 classes, for instance, are coming up to the basic minimum requirement. Okay, so if you feel that there are some schools wherein there are more than 2 or 3 classes, some of the schools may be practicing this, some of the schools may not be practicing this. So it is not a hard and fast rule that they have to be placed like this. Some of the schools may go ahead and place the students just like that without any particular reason related to their performance or their learning aspect. Okay, so placement in some schools they do this, in some schools of course they do not do it. Then the next purpose of assessment is to give a certificate or certification. Now, what is a certificate? Of course, it is a document serving as a written testimony which tells the educational status of a learner. It's not learner. Okay, so there can't be certification without assessment. That is what is said. I cannot give you a certificate without I assess you. I cannot say that, okay, I cannot write and give you, okay, this is to certify that so and so has learned this course. I cannot do that. I cannot say you have learned it until and unless you are assessed and you get that grade that is pass, that you have passed. Even a report card of a learner, if you see, it reads passed or secured so and so class, that is distinction, first class, second class, needs improvement, grades. Okay, it communicates that the learner has acquired the competencies. So assessment is done basically to make sure that you have acquired the competencies which are required for that particular class. When you are in that particular class, you are supposed to have that those competencies. Okay, and only when you gain those competencies, you will be promoted to the next class. Now you will be promoted to the next class based on how much of the competencies you gather. So based on that, you will get your grades: A grade, B grade, C grade, D grade, or needs improvement. So all these things happen when it comes to certification. So certification need not always be by way of certificates only. Okay, they can even the report card which is given to the learner is of course a certificate. Okay, so please remember that. So a certificate is a document which says that, okay, it is a written testimony, it is a written document which says that, okay, this student has completed, let us say, 6th standard, or he has gone to the 7th standard. So that is written and given to the students. Then the next purpose of assessment is grading and diagnosis. This is very important because diagnosis can be done only when assessment about a student's performance in a specific area is made. Now you can do that diagnostic only when uh, the performance of the student's performance is assessed in that particular field. Similarly, grading also is done, or it is grading also determines how much the student has understood in that particular subject area, or that the concept, how much of the concept has been grasped by the student. So grading too is determined based on the assessment data. So whether it is diagnosis or whether it is grading, both are done only based on the assessment that is the assessment data that is available. So this tells us that assessment is central to all decisions related to performance of a child. So you see, assessment is very, very important for the for any decisions to be taken about about a student or about a child. Now, whether to promote him to the next class, how will you decide it? It is based on assessment. What are the assessment scores? What grade to give? How will you decide that? Based on how is the assessment? Now, you are going to diagnose whether a student is really doing well or not doing well. How are you going to do that? Based on the assessment that is done. You are going to check. You are going to check the progress of the student. How are you going to do that? Based on the assessment. If you are going to provide feedback, how are you going to do that? Based on the assessment. If you are going to predict the learner's ability to achieve something in a specific subject area, how are you going to do that? Based on assessment. So assessment is absolutely important, very, very essential to make any kind of decision about a child's performance. Okay, so that was about purposes of assessment. Let us now look at some of the functions of evaluation. Okay, the first function of evaluation is to help in structuring the learning objectives. Okay, what type of knowledge and understanding should the student develop? What skills should they display? What interest, values, and attitudes should they develop? Okay, so all this is decided by evaluation. So the integration of learning outcomes in the cognitive, affective, and performance dimensions is facilitated by properly structured learning objectives. Okay, so you can integrate the learning outcomes related uh, to the cognitive aspect, affective aspect, or psychomotor or performance aspect uh, only with the help of learning objectives. Okay, so you need to understand that, very important. The second function is to help in assessing the learner's needs. Okay, in the teaching learning process, it is necessary to know the needs of the learners. The teachers must know the knowledge and skills to be mastered by the students. So evaluation helps to know whether the students possess required knowledge and skills to proceed with the instruction. So until and unless you know whether the child possesses those skills or he doesn't possess those skills, it will be difficult for you to proceed with your subject as well. So evaluation helps in assessing the learner's needs. What exactly does he need? Which are the areas which need to be worked upon? Very important. So evaluation helps in providing feedback to the students. An evaluation process helps the teacher to know the learning difficulties of the students. It helps to bring about an improvement in different school practices. And it also ensures an appropriate follow-up service is in place. Okay, so it not only helps in assessing the learner's needs, but it also helps in providing feedback to the students, which can help them which can help them to improve themselves. Then evaluation. The next point is evaluation helps in curriculum development. As you know, curriculum development is an important aspect of the instructional process. Evaluation data, the data which is available, enables the curriculum development to determine the effectiveness of new procedures, identify areas where revision is needed. Okay, this This is all a part of curriculum development, which is helped by evaluation. So evaluation also helps to determine the degree to what extent an existing curriculum is effective. You can also determine to what extent the existing curriculum is effective only with evaluation. So thus, evaluation data will be helpful in constructing the new curriculum and evaluating the existing curriculum. You can make out how effective the existing curriculum is and how should be the new curriculum based on the evaluation data which is available. Now, evaluation helps in reporting pupils' progress to parents. Because a systematic evaluation procedure provides an objective and comprehensive picture of each pupil's progress. So, this comprehensive nature of the evaluation process will help the teacher to report on the total development of the pupil to the parents. Okay. This type of objective information about the pupil provides a foundation for the most effective cooperation between the parents and teachers. Okay, so it helps the teachers to tell the parents as to how the child is progressing in the class. Now, evaluation data uh, is also very much useful in guidance and counseling. Very, very important because evaluation procedures are very much necessary for educational, vocational, as well as personal guidance. So, in order to assist the students to solve their problems in educational or vocational or personal fields, the counselor must have an objective knowledge of their abilities, attitudes, interests, and other characteristics. Now, how will you get that? That you will get only when you are evaluating the child or their abilities or their progress. So, an effective evaluation procedure has to be in place because it helps in getting a comprehensive picture of the pupil, which leads to effective guidance and of counseling. Okay, so effective guidance and counseling can take place only when there is an effective evaluation process in place to give you a comprehensive picture of the pupil or the student. Then the next function is evaluation helps in effective school administration, of course, because this helps the data which is obtained from evaluation helps the administrators to judge the extent to which the objectives of the school are being achieved, to find out the strengths and weaknesses of the curriculum, and arranging special school programs. So if it also of course helps in decisions concerning admission, grouping, and promotion of the students. So for instance, if schools want to arrange, let us say, an exhibition, which could be one of the special school programs, which now how will they decide on the subject if they have to just have one exhibition? That can be done based on, of course, the evaluation data. How? Now, for instance, if the students in a particular class where they are having the exhibition, they are good at a particular subject, then might as well they can have exhibition in that subject, so that they can come up with different kinds of models, or for that matter, some content for the exhibition. Okay, any special programs. Let us say if they want to have a seminar, how will they do that? Which are the subjects that they would find more relevant? Okay, so those things can come from the data which is obtained from evaluation. Now, the next point is evaluation data is helpful in school research. In order to make the school program more effective, researchers are necessary. Researchers are necessary. Okay, evaluation data helps in research areas like comparative study of different curricula, effectiveness of different methods, effectiveness of different organizational plans, etc. So it helps the school in making sure that the school program is more and more effective. Okay, so right now we will stop over here. So today we have done the purposes of assessment and the functions of evaluation. In the next class, we will look at the classification of assessment based on purpose, scope, attribute, measure, nature of information gathered, mode of response, nature of interpretation, and based on context. So that we will do in the next lecture. Thank you for your time. You can go for your next lecture. Uh, and of course, thank you for uh, filling in the Google form and sharing your views about those two questions that I had asked. Okay, I'm still expecting some more responses. Thank you for your time, dear teachers. God bless you.